Rick, we were to hear from Professor Aseka. Aseka, it's your turn.
Thank you, Dima. I have been disturbed by the whole thing called the hustler narrative. Why? Because as a student of history, I see this as a threat to national cohesiveness. I see it in a very silent way as starting to foment a confrontation that will erupt in violence. So the concept of hustling has not been intellectualized, it has not been problematized, it is just being thrown around as a slogan. When we know that looking at it, the notion of hustler involves some kind of jostling, it involves some kind of forceful action, it involves some kind of obtaining illicitly. And it does not therefore connote peace. And therefore, in my view, this is a kind of quest of seeking to instrumentalize disorder. I see it as a deceptive packaging of hidden interests which are not being disclosed. And therefore, it is not a production out of a very clear thought-out ideology, conceiving ideology as a system of views, values, ideas, conceptions, and notions that bring about the setting up of a proper political architecture that will give us an enabling environment for good governance. I don't see it that way. And therefore, knowing that leadership is a social construction which is driven by interests, it is time people came out and spelled out their interests and canalized those interests in a properly formulated political ideology that they can use as a system of organizing social and political action. I'm not seeing that as far as I'm concerned. And let us remember a scholar called Spence, in his book called Knocking the Hustle, he criticizes the hustle notion as a means of demobilizing and disempowering communities that need empowerment. And because it's a question of interests, when people have captured power, because the idea here is to capture state power, but when they are there, they'll end up disempowering the same people whom they are hoodwinking to think that they are speaking in their interests. And therefore, given that ideology is really a question of formulating a compelling and comprehensive vision, I'm asking Kenyan politicians to go back to reflectiveness, to come up with ideologies that reflect serious visions that they have for the country so that they can be labeled as visionary leaders. But with this kind of just throwing slogans here and there, they will instrumentalize disorder with a kind of populism that they are throwing forth, which, in my assessment, is a kind of political demagoguery. Yes.
So how is this predicated on the, the bigger umbrella and the thought of political industrial complex? Because everyone has interests. Even then, when you're talking about the political ideologies, at the end of the day, is all about interest. And it's not just for the politicians. There's a whole industry behind it. Just uncouple that for us briefly.
Yes, I think what this country needs is not political demagoguery. What this country needs is not populism. What this country needs is patriotic leadership and statesmanship. And this is what we are not seeing. We are not seeing an emergence of statecraft that is giving us a better order of things, a better organization of public affairs. Rather, we are seeing people jostling for power without reflecting on what statesmanship their leadership is going to reflect. And a kind of mobilization based on political ends for the social and political transformation of the country. There cannot be social and political transformation of the country in a place that is bereft of serious political thought and ideological production. And so there is a vacuum. And therefore, out of this vacuity, that is why we are seeing people coming in and clashing without a professionalization of their politics. Now, the word is politics requires to be professionalized so that it can be a problem-solving mechanism rather than politics being gone about in a Machiavellian way of the end justifies the means. So we have to move out of the Machiavellian heritage and come out as political leaders astute in understanding national questions and prioritizing national issues rather than serving self-interest. Because this will generate what we can call, number one, kleptocracy, enhancing a cadre of leaders who steal using their positions. That is kleptocracy. A governance that is characterized by leaders being thieves. That is kleptocracy. It will characterize, number two, prebendalism. Prebendalism coming from the word prebend, which is a word for...
That's a big word, Professor.
It is office. It's simply office. All right? So abuse of office for self-aggrandizement and creating networks which enhance one's illicit political power.
Thank you.
That is prebendalism. And therefore we have to recognize studies have been done on this. Johnson did a study on Nigeria, on the depth of prebendalism in Nigeria. And you know, these two, kleptocracy and prebendalism, entrench practices of ethnicity. And in Kenya, we can see very two clear processes. Number one, politicization of ethnicity. And number two, ethnicization of politics. How shall we get out of this unless we get statesmen that can think through and engage people in a kind of discourse that produces better ideas and systems?
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.